and thanks for being with me. Today's Monday, yesterday was Sunday, that may surprise many of you. And on yesterday, though, Peter Dutton chose to give a speech about his policies, the future direction of the Liberal Party. And I just wanted to make some comments, and I've got some clips from it which I thought may interest you. But I particularly wanted to mention this because, as you will see, I was present on this occasion. I was there to listen to this man, to take in every word that he said, to clap everything that he said, because he is a profound politician with so much to offer. And I felt that it was imperative that I would be there to meet up with him, to have a conversation with him, if you like, to chew the fat, to find out what's happening in this country that he disagrees with, and particularly to find ways to rectify whatever it is that seems to be wrong with Australia. So I listened patiently and carefully and took some notes on some of the things that he had to say. Just on reflection, though, I think it's fair to say that Dutton is a man who has zero charisma. The most exciting thing he did throughout this presentation was to wipe sweat from his brow, because clearly they chose a place under hot conditions that didn't have air conditioning. I guess you could blame that on, well, let's just say it's solar. So Dutton, though, gave this speech which told us a lot, I think, about who the Liberal Party are, the things that they believe in, and this conversion back to conservatism. And it's important, I think, that we understand what this conversion looks like and whether or not we are going to be a party to it. So these are some of the things that he said that I noted and I thought were interesting.
There's a saying, as many of you will have heard many times before, that oppositions don't win elections, that governments lose them.
And I just noted there, and I did put on the screen, as he did, he lost an election.
And as Defence Minister, I delivered record funding for our men and women in uniform, and I played a pivotal role in negotiations in establishing AUKUS with the United States and the United Kingdom. And I laid the foundations.
As someone who is opposed to AUKUS and who questions our reliance on the United States, and also questions particularly our allegiance to the colonialists, namely the UK, and also future colonialists and past colonialists for that matter, the United States, I am dubious about any association we have with either of those two people. But it is conservatives who will lay claim to the fact that AUKUS is a good thing, as does the Labor Party, but I disagree with them also on that issue and the reliance on the United States. And my guess is that will change under Trump, and who knows how the politicians will respond to that. If the Liberal Party get in, I would doubt that they would acquiesce to anything that Trump would say, but certainly I'd like to see the Labor Party take a stand against some of the bizarre consciousnesses of Donald Trump. But he goes on to say this.
The execution of the no case helped defeat our nation's most divisive referendum.
And this referendum, though, and this is still a hot point for me, was divisive because you bastards chose to challenge it. You could have accepted it. You could have encouraged people to vote for it, but you decided to have a no campaign because of your racist tendencies, and more about your racist tendencies come out in this particular speech. I am still upset about the nature of this country around racism, and as I'm also upset about lately there've been some anti-Semitic comments made, some anti-Semitic behaviours in relation to damaging synagogues and so on, which I abhor. Anything, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, racism. It is all wrong. We need to find ways to be able to live together. But whichever way you care to butter your bread, it remains that the Liberal Party are as divisive as they come. So they give lip service to these issues, but they, I believe, are still pretty divisive.
we halted Labor's Orwellian misinformation bill, which will never be resurrected under a government I lead. I believe in my heart that we must...
Because they believe that misinformation is something which they would like to participate in, which they did when it came to the voice referendum. And so they clearly don't want to change that, because for them, like most Conservatives, power lurks with those that can provide misinformation, who have the Murdoch press in their back pocket, who have people that are extremely right-wing supporting some of the ideas that this man thinks are good for the country.
Preserve the innocence of childhood and nurture young minds in a responsible way. I believe...
Now, their version of nurturing young minds in a responsible way is to have misinformation and disinformation, and particularly this is a bit Trumpian, I think, where they particularly want to make sure that the young minds are indoctrinated to their beliefs and their version of the world, rather than rational thinking and being able to think about the world differently.
I believe in egalitarianism, in judging people by the content of their character and in...
The content of their character. Now, that is borrowing definitely from Reagan, and who was a conservative, but had more moral nous and more understandings about the morality that we should be abiding by than what this man does.
Pushing back on identity politics. I believe in individual freedom, as you do, and the rule of law. And I believe that the main sources of enterprise and wealth creation are businesses and industries, not governments.
Now, that particular statement is so conservative. So he wants less and less government, which is a conservative right-wing perspective, and he wants more and more corporation involvement, and wants to get rid of red tape and a whole lot of other things. Now, what that basically means is that he wants no government control over what corporations, the greediness, the need to further fulfil their pockets with goodies, that he does what is in the best interest of the working class in particular.
Australians should keep more of what they earn.
I replayed this because I think this is a classic. This is a Labor slogan.
Keep more of what they earn. We will defund the Environmental Defender's Office.
And this is my point from before. They wish to defund this organisation simply because they don't agree with it. And there is a website which is ebo.org.au, and I suggest everybody has a look at this website, because it is interesting to know that there was a government department designed to be able to help organisations and those people fighting environmental vandalism from a legal perspective, and knowing what they should and should not do. And it's right across the Pacific, in fact, but it's instigated by the Australian government. Seems like a valuable and worthwhile organisation, but these bastards simply want to get rid of it.
We will revert to a simple definition of a casual worker, and we will...
So they're changing the definition of casual worker so that those people that have been viewed as casual workers under the current legislation will be wound back, and so that people, certain groups of people, will clearly be disadvantaged from any change to that policy.
Curtail union militancy. Thank you.
So Liberal want to curtail any involvement of unions.
And we will curtail militant unions in the workplace. We'll also not neglect disadvantaged Indigenous Australians. The Prime Minister has essentially forgotten about Indigenous Australians since The Voice.
No. Hold on, buddy. You forgot about Indigenous Australians by voting against The Voice. For God's sake, man, take some responsibility for what you did during that particular debate.
Labor's lost its way when it comes to energy, and we will address that issue as well, as I say. With the defeat of The Voice, we have an opportunity to move away.
I don't understand why he brought up energy. It's kind of like he lost his way there, while he talks about energy, then came back to talking about The Voice.
From activist-driven agendas and more Canberra-based bureaucracy. We can press ahead under a coalition government with our priority on practical action for Indigenous Australians. And as Jacinta Price said, it's time to dispense with the racial stereotyping, which treats all Aboriginal Australians the same. Now, there are communities where safety, housing,
wait for it, folks, because it's coming,
health, education and employment are critical issues. That's where our efforts must be targeted. We will start with a full audit into spending on Indigenous programs.
Bingo. Back to what the Liberal Party and the Nationals love most is basically curtailing funding for Indigenous programs. This is where they're going with this. This is what they will do. They will further disadvantage First Nations people if they get into power. He just told us so.
And Indigenous communities...
It's really disappointing the amount of applause this gets, in particular. Of all the things he talked about, this probably, along with AUKUS, this probably got the most applause. Frankly, he's a disgrace.
And in Indigenous communities where drugs and alcohol are prevalent, we will reintroduce the cashless debit card for working age welfare receipts in consultation with communities to make sure that children are getting the support from their...
In consultation with communities. There are many in the Indigenous communities who say that it disadvantages them, that what they want more is on-ground support, programs that are going to assist them as opposed to defining how much money they should spend and where they should spend their money. You know, and not every Indigenous community has a problem with alcohol either, or drug use, or whatever it might be. And so who are they going to make these cards available to would be another question. And whether or not they actually do wind up consulting the community, certainly, I would suggest, is most unlikely.
Parents that they deserve will bolster law and order in crime-heavy communities and will hold a...
So we bundle this notion of debit cards, cashless cards, for Indigenous communities. So they have their money dealt and handled out to them spasmodically by the government. And then we pivot to crime. So we associate the two together. So Indigenous people have drug issues, they can't manage their money, they have issues around looking after their children, and they have lots of crime. This is what he's telling us. And this is wrong, because frankly, it's just plain, blatant racism. So, that's my bit. That's about the only helpful thing, the only things he said that I thought were relevant. There's lots of other stuff that he rambled on about. But let me know what you think in the comment sections below. I wonder who actually wants to spend time listening to him. I believe Albanese's come out with a response, which is fair enough. I'll get a copy of that as well and perhaps play some of his responses. I need to say, though, that this year my criticism of both parties is going to increase. Not just because there's an election on the way, but because around the world we're confronted with right-wing crazy behaviour. And we need to ensure that when we notice it creeping into our own environment and our own discourse, that we need to be able to talk about it. We need to be able to call it out for what it is. And I plan to do that for 2025. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.